Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, we give our shoutouts. Laura and I discuss reading habits in the 21st century. We talk to John Jamison, the Western Region Team Lead for the Environmental Policy Unit at the NCDOT, about transportation NEPA, conference planning, and the best way to keep in touch with people as an introvert. And finally, on this day in science in 1906, pathologist Howard T. Ricketts discovered Rocky Mountain spotted fever is caused by the unusual microbe spread by ticks. Its symptoms are similar to typhus, except rash starts at the extremities and moves to the trunk. That's so gross. Why did I put that in there? The disease causes high morbidity, with about 70% of cases requiring hospitalization, without which the untreated mortality rate is about 7%. So that's all the more reason, if you get bit by a tick, that's pretty serious stuff. You got to take it seriously. So anyways,
public health announcement. Thank you, Nic.
It's our first public health announcement on the show. So please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Hit that music.
Our shout out for today goes to our NAEP All-Star and future guest, Michelle Rao. She has been recently promoted to Senior Environmental Project Manager with Jacobs. Congratulations. Michelle is also heading up NAEP's Environmental Justice Working Group. So kudos to her for getting that started. And she is just an awesome person. I can't wait to interview her. But she's also taking over co-chair for the webinars, which
that's right.
Used to be my task. So I super appreciate that. So looking forward to the next webinar season. Thanks for everything you do, Michelle. Be sure to share your promotions, new jobs, professional, and project awards with us on the EPR website. And if you would like to sponsor a future episode, head on over to environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out the sponsor form for details. Now let's get to our segment.
Cool.
We could keep it simple too. Like, do you have a favorite book? We've done favorite movies. We can do favorite books.
No, not really.
You read?
I used to read a ton, but my favorite book is my favorite movie. So it's very... I used to read a lot of books, but I don't do that anymore because I just love learning things. And so I just, for whatever reason, like Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite book. And like that whole trilogy was...
I loved reading Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's an incredible book or a series of books. And I really enjoyed it. But as I just got older, growing up with the internet, it just kind of changed the way I read. And so I went from reading books to reading articles and reading about, things that interested me in the moment. And so I feel like I am much more a spontaneous reader than anything else these days. Like every day I kind of start my day going, okay, what am I going to learn about today? And just go from there. So yeah, but I've noticed a shift. I used to read like they had those book clubs when you were really young, I used to just crush those, no problem. I was like, oh yeah, I'll read 20 books in the summer. Sure. Why not? And so yeah, it just kind of was something that I used to do now, and I don't do it as much anymore. It makes me a little sad. It was really good. I like books that challenge my way of thinking and just kind of, talk about, worldviews. But I also love a good fantasy novel. I love a good, mystery. I love mysteries. I've read like a ton of Stephen King books too.
Yeah.
Just horror has always kind of been interesting to me because it's, it's like reading something and getting scared. It really is kind of a really, intimate experience where you are literally reading things on the page and you're like, is there somebody behind me right now?
Yeah.
I feel like someone's breathing on my neck, and just, I don't know, very visceral writing.
For me, though, I kind of stopped reading books for a while just because I have gotten to the point where when I start reading with my eyeballs, I will fall asleep. So I can read about 2 pages a day. And so it takes forever to get through something. And then 2 years ago, I discovered audiobooks as if they were just invented or something.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I started listening to audiobooks and I went from reading one book in 6 months to 3 a month. And
wow.
It also, I would never read a book because I felt like when I was reading books that I wasn't working. So I also picked up the audiobooks and I would go for walks while I was reading. So then I felt like I was still doing something. So I got to do the 2 things at once there, which was awesome. And then I noticed over COVID, I read, which means listen to less books because I wasn't in the car very much. So then I got my listening what would that be? My tally for winning an award was going down. So I actually have a book club that I co-host with Lisa Sears, another consultant, and
of course you do. Yep. I'm not surprised.
we started last year with a 20 and 20 challenge, and then we've shifted it now. The challenge is just reading one book a month and then coming to our book discussion, whether you've read it or not, because that is a huge challenge for people. Lots of people are like, I didn't read the book, and they feel like they don't have any space to talk or contribute, but we're like, no, we want you to come. So actually Heather Miller's in the group now. So
oh, cool.
Yeah, awesome. Super fun. It's so much fun. But I spend most of my time reading leadership and personal development books, but I do love to read biographies, and I love a good Stephen King. As I get older, I have less tolerance for the scary stuff. I understand. Something's going to get me, and I can't do it anymore. But I did read his book that was a JFK time travel. It's It's like something 63. Yeah, I'm bad with the numbers. So it's the 1963, or I think it's actually the date of his assassination.
It's the date.
Which I'm sure I should know.
I think it's November. Let's see if I can do this. Is it November 5th, 1963?
I know it's November for sure.
Kennedy assassination. This is a thing we look up on the show here. November 22nd. I was wrong.
Yes. So that book is amazing. And I read that while I was on a road trip in my RV. And it was just this like doubly interesting experience, just being on the road and kind of shifting out of my normal life and reading about time travel in Stephen King's like vivid sense. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So highly recommend that one. And it's not his normal terror, scary books.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's funny.
So anybody who's getting weak like me, or, Toby totally agrees. He was there when I, in the RV when we were traveling. So he remembers.
That's funny. That's what he's talking about. He's like, speak for yourself. It was scary. Okay. I don't know. So the last book I remember like really, really reading start to finish was Game of Thrones first book. And,
that's so funny. That's the other book I read on my road trip, and I couldn't finish it. See,
it's one of those. This is one of those books where, like, out of 100 pages, right, 75 pages are just worthless. Like, he has a section in that first book where he's talking about a handmaiden as she's walking upstairs, or whatever they call her. I don't know. Like, it's just like somebody who's not important to the plot, and it's like her entire backstory. Like, like. This woman whose name is just similar to someone else's name, but isn't that person, but was born and, she grew up in and you're like, what is happening? Right. It's terrible.
Exactly. Yeah. There was 100 people to keep track of in your head. And you're like, who is doing what, when?
But then like, there'd be like 25 pages of just like amazing, like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Like,
yeah, Toby gets it.
Yeah. So like, it's just, it's wild, but it kind of like turned me off to books again. Cause I was like, this can't be what they're like. So
that's so funny. Yeah. And try listening to that in audiobook with a guy whose voice is super creepy, especially in the romantic scenes. Oh my God. I was so like, skip. This is awful.
Yeah. He's got a weird thing.
You don't get to do like a woman's voice in a romantic moment. It was really creepy.
That is pretty. Yeah. I mean, how could that come out great? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I should, leadership books, stuff like that. I do still read it. But
you should join the club. Right now we're reading Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, which of course, by the time this comes out, maybe we're past that, but well, cool. It's really good.
So yes, by the time you guys listen to this, I will be joining Laura's book club, and we'll definitely read all of the books before the meeting. So
challenge number 1.
Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. Let's get to the interview.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine, John Jamison, the Western Region Lead at the Environmental Policy Unit for NCDOT. He's also a past president of the NC chapter of NAEP and an all-around great guy.
John, how you doing? Mean it, Nick. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? He's great. John, how you doing?
It's hard to say that I'm great.
Oh, my goodness. I really just wanted to have you on so I could brag about you the whole time to Laura. That's really why.
Nick just wanted to prove to me he has friends.
I don't think John would say that. Yeah, he'd be the first one to be like, well, I mean,
I had a question though on your Your bio that you sent us, you said that you like golf, but you didn't think other people thought that was interesting or something. But I didn't know if that was sarcastic or if that was real.
Well, it's just there's a lot of folks in the environmental world that don't play golf or that kind of don't appreciate golf, I guess. But I grew up playing it. And
I have a different experience. Like with TBAP, I was the only person who wasn't on the golf tournament.
Yeah, I'm more on John's side. I've seen a lot of people go, nope, not for me.
Yeah, but I grew up.
It's a dying thing.
Yeah, it's just a good way for me to get outdoors. Because I'm all too often tied to a desk and a computer and don't get out as much anymore. Yeah, I just enjoy getting out and walking around on the golf course and in the woods and all. I'm more often in the woods usually. That's where my balls end up.
I mean, there is not a sport on this earth that is more frustrating than playing golf. I don't think.
That is
hard.
Sure.
It's a hard sport.
The last time I played, I was about ready to give it up, and that was just like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's why people drink when they do play golf. It's like I gotta make this okay. By the end, I have to not care that I sliced it 8 miles to the left. Or, I don't even know which way slice goes. Actually, now that I think about it. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just know it's bad. Like it should go straight, and it went like that.
Well, Nick, if you're ever looking to get out on the golf course, just give me a holler. I'll meet up with you and we can go play a few.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would. I have clubs. I am terrible, though. I want to put that out there. I am. Oh,
that's fine. There's actually the only place I play here locally anymore is a little 9-hole course that's literally down the road from me, and it's $10 to go play and ride in the cart 9 hole. And it's so cheap that you can't hardly pass it up.
For sure.
Yeah. Anytime. It's literally 2 minutes from my house. For you, 20 minutes away probably, but.
Right. Well, I mean, it's still, it's still better than me not going. So.
Yeah. And I mean, Laura.
Florida. Yeah. You'll get a lot of people who would come with you. Golf cart and beer. Like that's half of Florida demographic right there. It's like, yep, that's me.
Yeah. Maybe it's the states we were in. Maybe that's it. Growing up, it was different. I don't know. But yeah,
my
John's
grandpa
good.
loved golfing. I'll give it a try. Like I've done it many times just to make grandpa happy, but.
Yeah. That's fair. But yeah, it is fun though. Like you say, and getting outside, it does not, I mean, I don't know if I went outside like a dozen times this year because of COVID and everything. It's just,
right.
Yeah. I've had to push myself to get out of the house sometimes just to get out. Where I'm lucky, I have a nice screened in porch. So I end up on that a lot, I guess, when it's sunny, but that's not quite outdoors.
Right. What's new in the environmental transportation world? We haven't talked in a bit.
Everything. To respond to that. Yeah, it's kind of like they took confetti and threw it up in the air and they're waiting to see where it all lands with all the regulations and all that fun stuff. So we're just waiting to see how the chips fall. But it's fun. I've been at North Carolina DOT for like 2.5 years, I think. And everything's changed in those 2.5 years.
Right.
At the federal level, at the state level, and et cetera. So it's been a nice challenge. And yeah, between the new administration and everything else, it's just been it's a moving target.
You said you've been there for 2.5 years. You're doing something else before that, I assume. What were you doing before that?
So Nick's probably all too familiar. With co-workers for a long time. I was in consulting for, I guess, 19 plus years. Spent about 14 years at one firm and another 5 at a previous firm, and had a lot of fun doing consulting. Learned everything I know basically, because they don't train you in college necessarily for what you're going to do as environmental.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding.
You learn on the job. And so, the consulting world was great and I loved it, but just came up with a new challenge. So figured I would tackle it and go to the public sector and give that a shot and learn what it's like to be a client.
Awesome. Well, and I have, kind of 2 questions related to that then. I think as a consultant, you're doing more project management type stuff. And I think you have a little bit more of a management role now. And then also we have a lot of young listeners who may not know the difference between working for a consultant versus government. So maybe you can share your experiences with that.
Sure. Gosh, it's there's so many similarities, but there's definitely big differences as well. Working as a consultant, you're kind of working from project to project. You're always working on a particular project or a bunch of different projects potentially. My first 5 years, I was a firm where, all my projects were like, $10,000 and $20,000 budget projects. So they were constantly rolling in week after week. And it was always a changing dynamic there. And then my second job, I had a lot more big projects. So, they were much more longer term projects that you saw them kind of beginning to end for the most part. You didn't have to tackle lots of marketing because the projects lasted, a year or two sometimes. And then, going to the public sector, I deal with projects, but I'm not like managing projects. I'm not managing deliverables constantly. I'm more overseeing programmatic changes. I'm still dealing with complex projects that pop up and that sort of thing. But I don't manage projects directly. I'm more sort of a discipline lead for NEPA and complex environmental issues. So I'm able to sort of jump in and help out and fix problems and then jump back out and let the project run its course. And so I'm looking more at big picture issues as well. We do a lot of policy, big picture policy, procedural guidance work. And so it's a different kind of challenge. I dabbled in that a little bit as a consultant. I was able to mess with, work on procedural documents or guidance documents for clients here and there, but it was not a regular thing. So this is a good bit different.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. And I know you're also one of the best field biologists I've met. But you also have a political science degree. So how did you end up with that level of knowledge?
So I'm not a good field biologist, Nick. I surround myself with good field biologists. That's the key. Right. You put smart people around you, and then you can just ask them questions, and
right.
They'll keep you on your toes and keep you filled in. So my degree is kind of oddly named. My degree it's a BS in Natural Resources Policy and Administration. So It's kind of a cross between the natural, environmental sciences, but also with the political science administration side of the fence as well. So it was a nice cross pollination. I took economics classes, and I took some policy and administration type classes. To learn more. I actually took a class that was in NEPA in my undergrad. A lot of people don't get to do.
Right.
But then I also took some of the ecology and botany, that sort of stuff too.
What drew you to it?
It was honestly, I was not doing well in engineering, like so many people. I went to NC State, and I think they tell you when you go in that a third or a half of the class that you come in with is not going to stay in engineering and is going to move on to something else. And that was one of those. So I did not do well in engineering. I did okay, but realized it wasn't quite for me. So I looked at I had a friend who was doing natural resources, one of the different natural resources degrees at NC State, and saw, what he was what kind of classes he was taking ahead of me. And I looked at the list of courses, and I was like, oh, policy administration looks perfect. I was like, it had a class in parks administration, learning how to run, which was just cool, design a park, run a park, that kind of thing. Yeah. But also, ecology but then, some of the more policy driven things as well. And so I jumped into that. And I think I was one of 3 people that graduated with my degree that year. It was a tiny little bit. But the funny thing is, all the people that I graduated with, basically that were surrounding me with that degree or similar degrees, I know now and I'm working with now. And whether they're, at my DOT where I work or, consultants who I work with on a regular basis as well.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's a small world.
It really is.
Yeah. You make those connections in college and they stick with you your whole life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do. I've made quite a few friends over the years from different positions and jobs. People say you can't make friends as adults, but I disagree. You're also on the Transportation Review Board. What do they do and what kind of work comes out of that?
So TRB, it's the engineering transportation side of the National Academy of Sciences. And it's a giant conference every year. They have a conference in DC that has 15,000 people at it on a regular basis.
Jeez. Yeah.
So the TRB
switched to virtual too?
They did virtual this year, yes.
Okay.
And that was quite the interesting challenge. They had a lot more attendees, but it was also, difficult to make those same connections that you make in person with all those people, all the networking and all. But yeah, TRB is a great organization. I'm on a particular committee. It's actually changed names, and I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It's basically the NEPA and Law Committee. That's what it comes down to. I think it's transportation law. That's what they call it. But basically, they focus on NEPA and issues that come out of CEQ. So it's that's the general focus. In fact, Jomar Maldonado, who just recently went to work for CEQ, was the head of the committee until this past year.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Yeah, he's going to be on the show in a bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, great. Super exciting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned NEPA. I believe there's a different version of NEPA in North Carolina. How are they different?
So we have our own, state Environmental Policy Act. I guess officially it's the North Carolina Environmental Policy Act, but of course we call it SEPA. But it's basically NEPA light is what it comes down to. For all those projects that don't have any kind of federal nexus, SEPA still generally applies to it. So it's sort of the basics of NEPA. It doesn't get into all the same nitty gritty with all the federal guidelines, related to, greenhouse gases or environmental justice, some of those details at the federal level, but it covers the general environmental spectrum that NEPA does at the state level. So for me at work with DOT, pretty much all of our projects, of course, are state actions. So if we don't have a NEPA nexus of some sort, then we have some sort of SEPA documentation that we do for them. And obviously a lot of things have federal issues. So, they have Section 7 endangered species issues, or they have Corps of Engineers permits that are needed. So, those things tend to rise to the NEPA level of documentation anyway.
Okay.
And when you get involved with the project, is it something where there's an issue that's coming up and they're like, hey, John, we need you to help us out here? Or are there some projects that from the start, you're like, okay, I've got to be tracking this one, for a longer period of time because I know it will have those issues?
Yes, and yes. It's all of the above.
Of course.
I have those lovely things that crop up on a Friday afternoon and they need to be solved before 5:00 Friday.
Right.
And you've got to find a solution to make it work and push things along. But there's projects that right off the start that are going to be issues. We have a project that I'm not working on it personally, but one of my coworkers is, and it's it crosses into South Carolina. It's got federal funding. So it's got 2 different DOTs, 2 different federal highways, 2 different core districts involved. And it's so he's staying on top of the project throughout all the time from the beginning and will be until there's a rod on it eventually, hopefully.
Yeah. And I know it's a change from, being out in the field more often, but I don't know. Do you remember when you and I went out in the field and I got bit in the ass by a dog? I still think about that every now and then. And just those moments, I do not
Wait,
miss.
back up. Whose dog? I need details around this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did the wrong thing, right? Like we were doing a review for, I think it was a road that was going in. And and there were dogs there. And I just turned around for a half a second when we were around with dogs and he just nipped me right in the butt. And I'm like, yep. I did that. I did the thing I shouldn't do. And John was there to witness it. So I figured I had to get out in front of it just in case he brought it up. But,
there's so many of those fun stories. Gosh, yeah. Anytime you go out in the field, there's always going to be something that happens that's memorable. But that one's a classic for sure. Yeah.
Do you have any other ones? What's I know these are just some issues with snakes, maybe, or.
Oh, well, there's always snake issues in North Carolina, especially in the summertime. And anywhere down east in particular.
Do you have poisonous snakes?
Oh, yes. We've got, what do we got? 5 or 6 species of venomous snakes, I guess. And they're all across the state. So it just depends. Wherever you are in the state, there's always going to be a venomous snake of some sort or another. I was doing field work one day with a coworker and, we were walking down a creek and it was a very snaky area. It was down east, very swampy. And we looked across the creek and there was this giant copperhead. I mean, it must have been 5 feet long and just...
Wow.
I don't know, 6 inches across in diameter or something, but it was just huge. Maybe it just eaten like a deer or something. I'm not sure.
Right.
They just sat there and looked at us and we just kept walking. And I think we came back later, maybe like an hour later, and it was still sitting there, just hadn't moved.
Yeah.
It was just, that was its territory and we were not going to affect its, what it did one way or the other. I mean, I've had a long running joke amongst some old coworkers. There were 3 of us and one of my coworkers was out in front and she stepped over a snake. And I guess about the time she stepped over it, she realized it, but she was so scared of snakes that she didn't actually say anything. She just kind of kept going because if it was a venomous snake, she would just be silent and just like,
that's the worst way to be.
And didn't warn him. And of course we did the exact same thing.
Oh my God. Yes, each one of you is having a traumatic experience.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have a heads up, but
Oh, that's too funny.
No, we had lots of good times. Yeah, she also had a great eye for snakes. I mean, she would spot a snake from 100 feet away, and the rest of it would never even see it.
A mortal fear will do that to you.
That's true. Oh,
that's great. That sounds traumatic. I came across a rattlesnake on a horse one time, but thankfully the horse didn't see it, or he was just being silent.
Yeah. Also super scared. So scared. He's like, I don't.
Yeah, I'm thankful. I've never seen a rattlesnake in North Carolina. I've seen them out west, but never in North Carolina, I guess. And my field days are definitely waning. So maybe I've worked my way past that. But I'm hoping.
Yeah, right. Yeah. When we get back to it, though, that's the first thing that'll happen, right? You're like, hey, John, we need you to go out in the field.
Well, speaking of traumas, as Nic alluded to earlier, the conference planning is a lot of work. It's difficult. So we wanted to give you some kudos for working on the Durham conference. And actually, that was the first NAEP conference I ever attended. And here I am, addicted to NAEP.
Back. That's good.
There you go. Right? You're the reason we're here.
Really great. But yeah, we're trying to encourage people to volunteer. So we don't want to talk about how horrible it is. It's also a lot of fun and very rewarding. So, tell us what it's like to be an NAEP chapter president and help work on conferences and get involved. Why do you do it?
Oh, gosh. Well, the why is easy. I mean, it's great people to surround yourself with from beginning to end, no matter what the event is. It's always good folks. They're entertaining. They're fun to hang around with. They're fun to have a beer with. It's just a good time. And I got involved in the North Carolina chapter really early. I was actually coming out in college. We had a chapter, like a student chapter at NC State. And so I was a member of that. I may have been in the leadership of, there were probably 10 people in it. And I was maybe like secretary or something my senior year. But so coming out of that, I went to a couple North Carolina chapter meetings when I was in college, I think. And actually in their newsletter, their old paper newsletter that they would mail out quarterly, there was an ad for a job, and I applied for it and met the person that was doing the hiring at an NCAP meeting, and they hired me. So I got my first job literally through the North Carolina chapter contacts that I had made. And my second job, when HDR hired me in 2004, that was through somebody that I was on the board with the NCAP. So I got that job through NAEP as well. But it's just, it's good networking. I mean, everybody's a great professional, really good to be around with. And then at the national level, it's the same thing. The chapters are just a microcosm of what the national level is. The national conferences, it's so wonderful to get that national perspective on things and learn from other states, getting to hear what folks in, Arizona or Iowa or wherever, or what it is that they're doing and how they're approaching the same kind of problems that you're, of course, coming up with in your state. But at the national level, the conference is always a highlight. I tried to get to as many of them as I could. It was a lot easier to get to conferences when I was a consultant, because obviously the networking and all, it's a good marketing opportunity as well. But being the national heading the committee for the local Durham conference that we held, it was an honor. It was a huge challenge. I had to take a little bit of time away afterwards. We had some particular unique challenges that year with our conference in North Carolina.
That was the old hotel, right?
Yeah,
we had let's see, Durham. We had it in downtown Durham at the
convention center.
Yeah, the convention center, and I think it was a Marriott. That was the.
I'm thinking of Maryland. Okay.
Maryland was the older. Yeah,
Baltimore was the old hotel.
Yeah. That was the next year or the previous.
It was the next year. It was the next year.
It was 2 years after, I think.
Yeah.
But the one in Durham, we had some locally caused problems. We had the wonderful bathroom bill in North Carolina that our state legislature passed. The conference almost got canceled over some of that. And And, it had some unique hurdles surrounding all of that. But in the end, we had really good attendance. I think we had a couple of states where literally state governments said that their employees couldn't come to North Carolina. So we had some people that couldn't make that conference, unfortunately. But in general, we had really good attendance. It was a really good conference with lots of good topics. And it was just, it was an interesting challenge to take it on. It's a ton of work, but I made some really good contacts, got to know really good people, just learned how to lead something like that. It's not often you get to lead a 400 person conference and get into all the technical details. And, it's problem solving and dealing with people and different personalities and all that. So it was a lot of fun. Nic was probably the hardest to get along with. He was on.
Sure.
Nic did a great job and stepped in and, gosh, probably saved my butt a couple of times on some things that I was dropping the ball on, and he picked them up and solved the problems for us and made it all work.
Yeah. See, John's being really kind. I would say, it's much more often the other way around. But Laura and I were talking about leadership before, and how there's just times where there's times where you can allow for more of that creative input and interest. And then there's other times where you need to just make decisions and move forward. And I think there's a balance there that we have to strike, right? When you do those kinds of things.
Yes. I can tell you it's not something that comes naturally to me, because I tend to just want to make everybody happy. That's not the best approach when you're having to lead things and get things done. But yeah, I've had to learn to probably have a stricter approach, and I don't know, there's probably a kinder, gentler way of doing things than how I might sometimes approach them, because I probably come off a little gruff at times, having to make a decision and say, you know what, this is the decision, we're moving on.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even imagine that. You seem so nice.
Yeah.
You can be nice and gruff at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's why I'm growing the beard out. The quarantine beard, it helps. It scares people a little bit.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but like when I was like first starting, like considering a career in biology, Carol Sneed actually gave me your phone number and asked, and she said, "Hey, give this guy a call. He can help you out." And I remember you were probably the first person I talked to in the field. Like, I was super nervous. Like, I was just like, "Hello, my name is Nic," and I had no idea.
Your voice had changed since then, Nic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's funny because I had no idea what I should be doing or asking or saying to you. But I just remember you being very, very, very patient and kind to me at the time, and you're really good at staying in touch with people. And I just wanted to know if there's a secret to it that you had, or is it just something you've always done? Or, I don't know, any advice for those who are trying to get better at that kind of thing?
I probably have to credit my dad. He kind of showed me and taught me, and some of it probably comes natural, just the ability to sit down and talk with somebody and be patient and listen and carry on a conversation. And so I love those conversations with new folks to the field, or college students, or even high school students that are considering the environmental field. I just really enjoy, asking them questions and then trying to answer their questions, because I certainly, I've got teenagers now, and I understand kind of their perspective on things and how they, everything's wide open to them, and they don't really have a clue about what the environmental field really entails. But I love being able to fill them in on, what the possibilities are. Because in the environmental field, the possibilities are endless. There's so many different careers out there for you these days, and it's much more diverse than it was, 20 plus years ago when I was coming out of college. So, all the variations with the climate change, things that you can study, and policy and sustainability and resilience, and these things that just hardly existed back then as a job. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun for me to figure out what's out there, because there's new careers popping up every day. So going to the conferences and things like that, talking to folks with different states and whatnot, and things that are basically new lines of work that are popping up regularly. It's fun to hear about that. I know when I went to the Baltimore conference a couple of years ago, I had a good conversation with somebody from Maryland who was with the state of Maryland, and just getting to hear what their state was doing and how they were approaching climate change and resiliency and all those things. They were clearly kind of a step or two ahead of us at the time, because they had some funding and they had some particular initiatives that have been pushed along. So it's neat to bring that back and see what we can do to help to meet or exceed that from other states.
A lot of stuff you said was really good about networking and getting started. And it's a good story to hear that always have to push it home that networking doesn't mean handing out your business card everywhere. It means starting relationships with people.
You know, having a conversation and following up. I think that's the thing that John's very good at. You follow up with people too. You'll touch base, you know, and be like, hey, how you doing? You know, and it's just a simple thing, right? It's just the easiest thing in the world. But
I mean, you know me, Nick, I'm an introvert. I pushed myself to make that happen, but I push myself to make it happen at least as much as I can. Like Ines that we used to work with, she moved up to Richmond area, and I've had to push myself and remind myself, oh, you should reach out and check in on her, see how she's doing.
Yeah. But I think it's a really good point. Like you do it as much as you can, not all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta just squeeze it in here and there. But yeah, that's part of my job now. Honestly, is that little bit of outreach, and the way my job is now. Yes, I'm like a client. I'm a state government employee or whatever, but I've got all these little clients all over the state inside my department that essentially, if I don't keep them happy, they're not going to use me for my expertise or whatever. So I still have to put on my consultant hat, even as a even as a state employee.
Yeah, that's great.
Really great.
Yeah, which is our new catchphrase. Apparently, I think I said that like 17 times today.
That's great.
But yeah, it's just, I really do appreciate the answer. It's a really good thing. And, for those of you listening, if you do, I'm going to put him on the spot. If you do have career advice or questions that you want, John is a very good person to ask. He admitted it on air that he will sit down and talk with just about anyone. I think is what he said. I don't know.
I'm happy to. And it's fun, Nick, because at the time, I think when I first talked to you, and Carol had referenced you over to us, you were, I don't know, coming out of college or maybe just out of college. And we didn't have a position that we could find for you. And unfortunately at the time, and we were lucky enough that you landed, within our company somewhere else. And ultimately we ended up having to deal with you because you moved to Raleigh.
Yeah, for sure.
We got lucky and had you added to the staff there. But, Carol's one of those people, and I actually just traded messages with her in the past day or so. She's one of those people that I have always looked up to, respected. If Carol called me up tomorrow and said, hey, I need you to work on a project, I'd have to go to my employer and say, I've got to find a way to help you.
Right. Yeah.
She's amazing. And so I've always kind of tried to follow her lead when it comes to how she approaches things, at both professionalism and also, she has a great perspective on life too. So it's kind of just fun to have those conversations over a beer with her as well.
Absolutely.
People in the NAEP that are like that. And Betty's also, I kind of think of Carol and Betty in similar regard. They're just so much fun, and just I learn so much from them every time I talk to them.
Yeah, Carol's our chapter lead now, so looking forward to having her involved with that.
Yeah, but before we let you out of here, is there anything else you want to add? Is there any way for people to, if they want to get in contact with you, or any other projects you have you want to talk about?
Gosh, I have gotten away from the North Carolina chapter a bit the past couple of years. I've kind of gotten involved with other things and also just kind of focused on my new job. But I'd like to get back involved in the North Carolina chapter a bit myself. And I everything I hear is that things are going really well. I know the quarantine time has been kind of tough to get involved because everything's virtual and all. But as we're coming to this and all, it's an opportunity to get back and see some people in person and get back involved with both the chapter and the National Association. I think there's lots of great opportunities that are going to pop up here later this year, as everything hopefully gets back to normal. So I would just encourage everybody to get back to meetings. I know I'll be trying to do that myself and get back to getting involved in the chapter and the National Association as well.
That's awesome. Excellent answer. I changed it up that time. Thank you, John, so much for your time. We really appreciate having you on today.
Thanks. This is great. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you too. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a really awesome interview. I'm glad you invited him on the show. It was great to meet him.
Yeah.
And, really nice to learn that you have a friend. Now I know you have at least one.
Just the one. Yeah. Don't get too excited.
I love what he said about, why you should consider joining NAEP from a local level, even if you don't travel and you have like your region that you work in, because it's still good to learn what they're doing in other states. And of course, you never know. I know this from experience when you might be looking for a new job or something. It's always good to be connected. But I think, especially now the conference is virtual, it's really, well, by next year, we're probably not sure, but whether it's virtual or hybrid or whatever it is, or even in person, like it's so much fun. It's worth getting to. Absolutely. And it's really great. And I think even a tangible example, I know that like North Carolina, for example, updated their GIS for all of their natural resources a couple of years ago. Yeah. And one of the main things that they were interested in was how other states were collecting their data, because if they could find a better, more efficient way to do it, why not? And I think that's what John speaks to. It's a really good way to learn new things. Yeah, I think maybe, it comes down to having a growth or a fixed mindset. I've definitely come across some people who, this is my job, this is all I ever want to do. And, that's okay for them. But if you are one of those people who has more of a growth mindset, like conference is where it's at. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get involved. Yeah, but anyway, so much fun. Thanks, John, for joining, and look forward to meeting in person. Be sure to check us out next Friday. And before you go, hit that subscribe button and leave us a nice rating and review. Till next time. Thanks, everybody.